Welcome to episode 130 of the How Did It Happen podcast, hosted by Mike Malatesta. In this episode, Mike welcomes Bill Bloom, the president of Bloom Financial Company.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. As you heard in the introduction, I've got Bill Bloom with me today. Bill, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. This is such an honor.
I was telling Bill beforehand how, well, first of all, Justin Breen, who was on an earlier episode, connected the two of us. And if you're not connected to Justin Breen, you will be at some point soon, because he is really the ultimate connector. It's his unique ability, as we will talk about unique ability as we go through this, a little strategic coach term that, for those of you who listen often, know that I sprinkle into almost everything that I'm doing. But Justin connected us, and then right away, Bill was just very responsive and energetic. And I was telling him, it's always great to have people who will give you like a ton of energy right off the bat, because sometimes you don't get that, and it was a good reminder for me too, because that's what I need to be doing all the time. And I try, I hate to use the word try, but I know that I should be all the time, but sometimes I know that that I don't get there. So you've inspired me, and I'm more on my game now as a result.
Good man.
So as you know, Bill, I start every podcast the same way, and it's with a simple question: how did it happen for you?
Well, it depends on how much time we have here, but no, in all reality, Mike, thanks for having me on your show. I'm a huge fan. You've had some amazing guests, and how things have happened for me. When I was a younger kid, I realized that I wanted to really make an impact and a difference in people's lives financially. And when I was going through high school and university and my whole entire life, I realized that the way that my brain works is reverse engineering. So my brain is able to take a complex situation and simplify it down to try and make it easier for someone to, really understand a complex topic. And that's really how my brain works. And I love helping people, create income that can last their whole entire lifetime. But this all stemmed from how I grew up and how I was raised and the people around us. And even when I was a younger kid working at the concession stands to buy baseball cards, I realized you needed money to do the things you wanted to. But as I grew older, I realized that money is a byproduct of how you want to live your life. It's not the goal. Money is not the goal. It's just a byproduct of how you want to actually live your life and the things you want to do, because our happiness comes from making progress, making good choices, and surrounding ourselves with great people and having abundance mindsets and having positive mindsets, and realizing that a lot of the things we do every single day, we do unconsciously. Spending, our habits, do we exercise, do we not exercise, our thoughts, and all those things go hand in hand together. So when I started my business 6.5 years ago, I wanted to create this holistic type of retirement plan that that helps people realize their purpose in life, but also that how do they not outlive their income? So they marry each other, because our passions and our purpose are dictated sort of by what our monies allow us to do. So we need to work together.
So you mentioned as a kid, and your audio was a little sketchy for me, or my ears were at the very beginning. So I just want to make sure that I captured that correctly. Did you say that you sort of knew from an early age that you wanted to help people financially? Is that what you said?
When I was a child, I realized some of the money issues that people were having around us, and just in different segments of our life. And I realized the magnitude of issues that it could create in someone's life at a super early age. And where I'm at now is I realize that I could really, really spend time focusing on other people and helping other people. So all those pretty dramatic financial issues that happened when we were kids, it always stuck with me. And that's what made me want to go into the world and help others with their finances, because we're not taught it. We're not taught education or financial education when we're kids. I've spoken to so many people that said, I was taught how to write a check, but I don't know how debt works. I don't know how a mortgage works or a loan, credit card debt, and the issues that can get you in. And I want to preach that and educate that. A book that I have coming out this month is all about that. It's all about your money habits and creating better money habits for success. So at the end of the day, Mike, I just want to help people, whether I work with them or not. But that's where the self-education piece comes into play. You want to have that ambition to actually learn and get better.
Right. And these things that you were noticing, was it in your own family or your own upbringing, Bill, or were these things you were noticing outside of that and somehow had the, I don't know, early foresight to understand what was going on and commit yourself at a young age to working towards wanting to do something about that?
Right. So here's a perfect example of something that happened. When I was in 5th grade, one of our best friend's parents passed away on Thanksgiving. And when you're so young and they had a baby, they had a 1-year-old at the time. And at that time, I don't know what their planning was, right? I mean, I don't know their financials. We were just kids.
Right.
I definitely realized the magnitude of that situation. And when you're so young, that stuck with me, realizing that if you don't plan, whether it's good or bad, that life that you are living is dramatically and drastically going to change. And I want to help avoid that for people.
So once you had that realization, let's just say 5th grade or so, how did you, it's a really young age, so I'm wondering, how did you bring intentionality to your life or what you were doing, if you did, to work towards being able to manifest into a career what you were thinking as a kid?
Right. So when I was in high school, I started to pick up some simple literature, business books on finance and education, because again, that was something we were not taught. And I love my parents. They're great people, and they were your traditional employees, and that's okay. They were not business people. There's nothing wrong with that. I always knew that I wanted to be really in control of my own destiny and my own time and my own freedoms. And I always knew that I wanted to have those freedoms as a kid. That was a big part of my life, is that I didn't want to have to go into the boss's office and they'd say, you know what, you're doing a great job, but we have to let you go because the economy is bad, or we're in a recession, or the company is not doing well. I never wanted to be in that position. I always wanted to be my own boss. And when I got into college, this was really the turning point for me, where the light bulb went off. So we had a gentleman from IBM and UPS that they worked there, and they helped us because they were some of our financial professors in school. So I was learning from some really bright people who have actually done some great things in the business world. So I was really grateful for that opportunity to learn from them. And another gentleman, he was a financial advisor, and he taught one of the finance courses. And that's what really got my attention. I was like, wow, this guy seems very smart. But I was thinking to myself, I can figure this out. I love listening and learning about this. So that's where my passion really exploded, to really pursue this full time. And I've been in the financial advising world right out of college since 2008.
And when you got into, when you were on your way into college, where was your path? Where were you thinking your path might go? I mean, yeah.
I was thinking that I definitely wanted to become a financial advisor. I knew
Okay,
it
you
out
knew
of
that.
college. Yes.
Yeah.
I knew I wanted to work with individuals and families, and I didn't realize owners of different companies at that time. And now I do that a lot because that's one of my passions. Being a business owner myself, we have a lot to relate with. But I knew right out of college that's what I wanted to do. And starting in 2008, during the financial crisis, it was a hard time, but it was sort of a blessing in a sense because people wanted someone to talk to, and I just wanted to listen. So what I did is when I started, I would pull in some of the mentors who had been in my prior firm for 30 years or 20 years. And I brought them on my appointments with me because I needed to learn. I wasn't sure what I was doing yet. So I brought in people who have been doing this for a very long time just to learn and how to do things and do things the right way for people.
And when you got out of college, started interviewing, what made you make whatever choice you made for the first job you took?
Well, gosh, this is a good one. Oh boy, I remember this vividly. I was at my parents' house because I was living with them at the time, right out of college. I had student loans. I had no income. The day that I got my rejection letter from one company was the same day that I received a phone call for an acceptance, that I got accepted for the position to become a financial advisor at the company that I worked my first 6.5 years with. I think it was just fate that way, Mike. It was just meant to be.
That's interesting. A rejection letter and a phone call on the same day.
Yes, same day, within hours of each other. It was
But rejection first.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So I was like, well, I know where I'm going.
And was that in the Chicago area or somewhere close? Did you want to stay in that area, or were you looking sort of all over the place, or what was your motivation?
Yes, my motivation was to stay in the Chicagoland area because that's where all my family and friends. And when
Yeah.
you're first starting off in business, especially in the financial advising world, those are your most important people to speak to because they already, know, like, and trust you. And it's hard starting off when you're 22, not knowing that much from a financial perspective. So it was just an uphill battle all the way for the first couple of years.
So it's why don't you give us a flair for how uphill it is? Because I'm thinking of a couple of things. One, you start without a book of business. There's no, you're sort of, at least I think, I don't know how it worked at the firm that you started. And then second, even though you've got a degree, you really have never probably have never helped someone manage their money for real. And I think that it's interesting actually that, the way that you've got your facial hair, because my financial advisor started at a very young age as well. He's about my age now, so I'm older than you, but he grew that because one of the first women clients that he had a chance to meet with told him that he looked too young and that he should have a beard. Well, he didn't want to have a beard, so he instead chose like a 2-day or 1-day thing, and he's kept that ever since. So I'm not comparing the two of you because of that. What I'm trying to get at is what are these obstacles that make it uphill, because they're not insignificant.
They're huge.
Yeah.
Mike, that's definitely part of it. When I was 22 and 23 and 24 and throughout my 20s, I had a baby face. And people would always ask me, how old are you? And they could tell on the phone too when I was calling people. They could tell. But I still think that during those times, people wanted someone who was going to listen to them. And listening is a skill that I developed a long time ago as a child. we would sit on our driveway with all the neighbors, and I would just sit there and listen to them talk. I mean, I'm not going to interject and say things with all the grown-ups around, but I'd spend a lot of time listening to adults. And I think that's why I primarily work with people who are 50 to 70 plus now, because that's the demographic that I really grew up with and I understand, and I could actually speak their language. But going back to starting off the business, being 22, 23, I was spending the 80 hours to 100 hours a week in the office. I remember every Monday night we had a calling session, and I was there to make phone calls because how else are you going to see people? I was there every Saturday morning in the office. And those are the years where you want to go out, hang out with your friends. And
Right.
I was spending time working because I had goals for my first year, and I accomplished them. But still, it was very, very difficult. And the second year was even harder because you ran out of all the people who you know to talk to.
Your Rolodex is exhausted, right? Yeah.
But I made it a very good point to buy nice suits when I started, to look professional, put a tie on. It really takes very little effort to do that. And that was one of the ways that differentiated me. My shoes were polished. I had my tie on, my suits were pressed, my shirts were pressed. Those little things, those details show that if you're taking care of yourself, that can translate and into taking care of other people, and you're going to pay attention to those details. And at Bloom Financial, my current company, we are meticulous about those details because, in my opinion, they mean the most. People want to remember those little things, their anniversaries, their birthdays, that one change that they said they wanted to do in however many months, or that's what makes the difference. That's where the relationship grows and blooms and really is organically grown. And I think it's all done by listening.
That's great that you connected blooms to bloom. I love that. It's probably not the first time you've said that, but it as soon as you said that, I was like, blooms. Okay, yeah, that matches with what you're doing. I like that. Tell me about the two things, Bill. The environment at the company you were working at when you were getting started, and which I think you said was fostering, or I think you said, you didn't say fostering, that's my word, but something like that. And then the decision that you made to start your own firm, because to be independent, I think that's another uphill, or can be another uphill battle.
It was an even harder battle the second time, and I'll get to that in a moment.
Mm-hmm.
So the culture, the philosophy, the environment at the first firm that I worked at was unbelievably amazing. It was fantastic. I'm still close with a handful of the people who used to work there. One of them, I speak to him every week. And he was our head compliance gentleman. So he was in charge of our whole agency's compliance. And we talk every week. And the people there that's what really kept me, because I had some really tough times during those years. I ran out of people to talk to. I had to figure out new strategies. Being so young, it was difficult. And I realized I had a certain set of tools to use in the tool bag, per se. And I really wanted to have all of the tools available to do the job the best way I possibly could. And I realized this right when I got to 25 or 26. One of the gentlemen in our office said to me, you're not going to be here in a couple of years. And I'm looking at him. I'm like, what are you talking about? I was like, you don't think I'm going to make it? He goes, no. He goes, you're going to be out on your own in a couple of years. I go, what do you mean? And he said to me, Mike, you've got the tools and the personality, but you're doing the right thing for people to go on and start your own company. And that was such a game-changing moment to hear that from a veteran who's been in the industry for over 40 years. And that was powerful to hear that as a young 20 something. And when I got closer to my 28th birthday, I was 27 at the time, I started to look into different options. And one of my friends who I know was working at the broker dealer RIA that I'm at now. And I said to him, can you introduce me to the people from the compliance in the home office? Because I have a really great team who supports my business and the back office work and the compliance. They are amazing people. I'm super grateful for them because without them, I couldn't run my business.
Sure.
Amazing. So I was interviewing 5 different companies, and this is the one that actually won the negotiations, the battle per se. And when I was 28, I ended up leaving and started my own firm. And the problem with that is I couldn't bring my past clients with me. I had to wait 9 months, 2 years to start working with them again. So I was back at not one penny of income at 28.
And you knew that when you made the decision. Okay.
Correct. I did. It was the best business decision I made because it really gave me all of those tools that I was looking for to work with people. And I've been able to work on different sorts of cases now and different kinds of clients because of that. But it was really hard because I had to start all over again. And a lot of my family and friends, they were with the prior company and I couldn't do anything with that for a couple years. So it was starting all over again at 28.
So I guess a couple of things there. First of all, congratulations, because that's the kind of thing that keeps a lot of people from doing what you've done, because that's really scary, right? And they feel like, well, I'm kind of stuck, right? Because I can't go without income, and and these are the people that know me best, so the likelihood that I'm going to get new income in a short period of time is probably, maybe it's not that great. I don't know, but so I applaud you on that, because that's a scary, that's an entrepreneurial decision. That's a scary entrepreneurial decision. So I have to ask, were you able to get a lot of those clients back when you were relieved of the obligation, or non-compete obligation, or whatever it was? And if you were, how come? How come?
Well, some of those individuals, yes, I was able to work with them. One of the reasons is because some of those investments were inside certain products, and I had to get appointed with that company again. So they accepted my appointment because I had no issues on my record. And it was more about that relationship. They had been working with me for 3, 4, 5, 6 years already. And they wanted to continue that because they already know, like, and trust me. And we've set up a plan for them. But it took a lot of time, Mike. It took a lot of time. It wasn't quick. It wasn't easy. We didn't make a lot of money that year. It was difficult, but it went back to my mindset. That year I joined Strategic Coach. That was the year when I had no income. Talk about even more difficult to say.
Right, yeah, because it's not inexpensive to join, yeah.
Right, I needed that direction. And, Teresa Easler was my coach during those times. And my group was phenomenal, but I was definitely the youngest person in our group by far. But I had already known about the program through MDRT, and I was already implementing the free days, the focus days, and I was already aware of that. So I had a pretty good foundation, and I had some of those quarterly books that Dan was starting. But I needed the full picture. It only gets you so far, those books. And that was really an important change in my life. I just had a mindset change, knowing that I wanted to be my own boss and this was my opportunity to do so. But my purpose was so much stronger because I wanted to help the people. and I wanted to be there for my people. And that's what I still do to this day from a holistic standpoint. And I was just telling my wife this a couple weeks ago because I just had my birthday. I said, I feel better now physically, emotionally, mentally. I feel better now than I did 10 years ago when I was 25. And I think a lot of that is because of coach and reading books and learning and just really investing in myself to try and grow as a human. Because if I'm going to grow, the people around me are hopefully going to grow as well.
And you mentioned becoming aware of coach or coach principles through MDRT. I don't know what that is.
So that is an award that you could win by production in the financial and insurance world. It's the $1 Million Roundtable.
Oh, okay.
It's something that I accomplished my first year in the business. That's what my goal was. And that's why I worked the 80 to 100 hours a week. It was not easy. And that's how I was introduced to coach. Because one of the gentlemen at our prior office, he had just left and went independent himself. And I saw this in my very first year. But when we went to the meeting, which was in Vancouver that year, I actually went to the national meeting and he introduced me to the strategic coach people. So I learned that from really the first year I was in my business. I mean, not the whole capacity of it, but little nuggets of information. And I stayed in touch with people from the company. And that relationship grew with the people, with the company and learning about the company. And I knew when I was leaving and starting my own company that I needed that help.
That's pretty wise. So when you started, was it just you? Did you have a couple of people with you? What was the planning like? How did you put it together?
Oh my, I would have done things a million times differently. I was not prepared the way I should have been because I thought, well, I'm starting over from scratch. I could kind of just go at it because I'm a quick start by nature. I'm an 8 quick start.
Okay.
Like I'll figure it out because that's kind of how I just did it that way. So from a planning perspective, I would have used the strategy circle a lot more. I would have used the impact filters a lot more and been a lot more concise about things. But I really needed to just find more clients to work with and who wanted to work with myself. So that was my main focus at the time. It was just, let's find our right clients because I was trying to implement the right fit and again, not work with just anyone. And that was even harder because you're narrowing down whomever you could work with. So it was hard. It was very, very hard, Mike.
And when you decided as a first year entrepreneur that you needed this additional help, which you sounds like you ended up getting a strategic coach. There are other places where you may have looked to. I don't know. I'm curious about that. If you looked at other places, so what were you really looking for? I guess that's the thing that's in my mind right now. What were you looking for? Because I can tell you that when I started as an entrepreneur, I was around the same age as you were. And boy, I mean, I would have seen education for myself as an expense, as something that I didn't have the time to do. You know, all the probably wrong excuses for not doing something. And then here you are around the same age, and it's one of the first things you do, even when you essentially have a startup business with no business.
Correct. Again, it goes back to you need to invest in yourself to grow. And that's part of what I want to do as a human. I mean, I'm very young. I expect to have a very, very long lifespan, but I still want to grow during that time throughout my whole entire life. I don't want to hit 50 years old and stop learning, stop going to classes, stop taking classes. I still want to continue to grow my brain. And that's why I love reading books. And that's why I love speaking to people like yourself and Justin and a lot of people in, our circles that we have. because they have different mindsets and they have great books to recommend, ideas to share. And that's fascinating for me. And that's part of loving being around people. That's so important. And that's why I'm in a people business. I'm not in a widgets business. I'm in a people business because that's just my personality and my mindset.
And speaking about being in a people business, that's been made a lot tougher to be in the direct people business by the pandemic that we're making our way through. How has that affected maybe your business on one end, but you, I guess, even more as someone who is, someone who wants to engage with people, and it's difficult. We're engaging on this Zoom call, but it's not the same as sitting in your, apartment or whatever with you. It's really getting to know you, right? So,
well, the pandemic changed a lot of things for my business in the best way possible. Number one is, I'm always, always, always connecting with my clients. That's one thing. Whether things are good, bad, or indifferent, you hear from us because I just want to see how people are doing. So we were very forward focused on using Zoom. It became such a great tool. So our team implemented everything virtual in less than a week. That means we recorded a webinar where people could go and watch it whenever they want. We did an automated lunch and learn that got approved with our compliance. And every Friday that was running, we started to hold Zoom webinars to talk to them about investing and what's going on in the marketplace and about retirement planning because the market's changed. And if someone was planning on retiring, they may have had to rethink that. So it actually turned out to be a blessing for us because it made running the business so much more efficient. I was able to do 5, 6, 7 Zoom meetings in a day, whereas before I was physically going to their business or their home to see them. I was actually doing that still. It made life so much more efficient and more productive. And we started to implement a retirement income planning software that actually shows people in not a lot of time how their current plan would look if they were to retire today. So it shows any gaps or shortfalls that they're going to have. So we just started utilizing technology completely, and we made a lot of our clients' plans better because of that.
Okay.
So business has really been a lot of fun during the pandemic. On the other hand, my wife is super intelligent. She has 150 plus person team that she manages. So we have a 15-month-old at home. Now 15 months, but it was 9 months when the pandemic started. So we were switching off our time. I was on daddy daycare in the mornings and she was on mommy daycare in the afternoons. And then we would both work into God knows whatever time into the night. So that was difficult for the first part of the pandemic, but it was another blessing because we got to see our son walk for the first time and say his first words during these times. I'm just super grateful for it. We wouldn't have been able to see that most likely otherwise.
So he would have been in daycare otherwise, or
Correct.
yeah, okay.
Yep.
Huh. And you mentioned a couple of times the word abundance so far. And, in certain circles you hear that word a lot. I'm in a group that's actually called Abundance 360. But in most of life, you don't hear. It doesn't seem like abundance is really a popular word. So I'm curious how you define abundance and how you apply it to your life.
How I define that, I define that by your mindset. I mean, we live in a wonderful country. We live in a very robust country. And a lot of the things that make our lives pretty simple are available to us within even a couple days from shipping somewhere else if we needed something or something breaks in our house. I mean, that's part of abundance. We have the resources here to make our lives comfortable. I mean, just look at us. We have a baby, but we have these nice tools and these toys and these simple things that make life easier. 150 years ago, we didn't know that much about these ways to help the baby and make the baby's lives easier, and creams if they have a rash. I mean, just like little things like that. It comes from your mindset and realizing we don't have that difficult of a life. We have a pretty simple life at this point because we have technology, we have cars, we have airplanes, we have business. I mean, we're able to do business over a little 15-inch monitor, right?
Yeah.
Life is pretty amazing, but that's how I view the world. I think it's unbelievable how this works. I mean, don't get me wrong. I could barely use all the functions on my computer, Mike. I'm not like a technology expert, but
me neither.
Yeah, it just makes our life so much easier. My team is great at it. I'm not. So the abundance thing came from reading Dan's books and being in coach and just learning that mindset. You have to learn it. But let's take a step back. This whole idea of abundance is hard to learn because when we start our educational process, we're taught to get good grades, go through high school, get the best GPA you possibly can, go to college, take out debt, and go get a job somewhere. Is that abundance, or is that sort of follow what everyone else does? And being an entrepreneur, we don't want to do that process. We kind of want to build something. We want to grow something or create something. And that's what makes things different. And I really believe that we all have great abilities to create something or be productive in something. And there's only a handful of things that we're truly good at. So when we focus on those different areas, we could build something around that or build a team around that or a process behind that to create value for the world. And that's what we try and do for my company.
And thank you for that. Your shirt says retire as you desire, which that's a brand of sort of a trademark of yours or something, I'm assuming, right? That's what you use. You mentioned that, you expect to live a long life, have a long lifespan, which is an abundance sort of mindset there. Here's the thing. You're in a unique position to give me perspective on this, because you've got, on the one hand, you've got an entire industry, multiple industries that are sort of trying to teach people, like you were saying with education and all that, they're trying to teach people or show people what retirement should mean. So retirement means that, you can fish, or you can, do all the things that you couldn't do while you were working. And then on the other hand, in the strategic coach program, and this blew me away when I was in the program, when I got in, is that they sort of treat retirement, Dan particularly treats retirement as like a 4-letter word. So I believe he says that the root of the word retirement goes back to Austria or Germany or somewhere, but it means something like to take out of use.
Correct.
So basically, we've got young people coming up. We have to take old people out of the system because otherwise the young people have nowhere to go, or something like that was the rationale for getting it started. And here you are engaged in that on one hand, and then helping people plan for what is, maybe there's not a better word for it right now, but for retirement. And I'm just wondering how you square that up, Bill. And I'm also wondering, do you try to talk people out of it? Okay.
Oh boy. This is such a loaded question. This is good. I could talk about this for hours. So Dan and I actually spoke about this 2 weeks ago at our 10X course. So we were
Okay.
talking offline, and I said to him, retirement is going back to your purpose. So when you get out of bed in the morning, when you have that fire and that desire to get up and go create something or write a new book, like he creates a book every quarter and do podcasts and shows and interviews and create content. That's his passion because Coach is his baby and Bab's baby. That's what they've created. And it's truly remarkable because they've been able to help tens of thousands of entrepreneurs like us
Yeah.
have a bigger and better future. So the thing about retirement is I want to help people who don't have those entrepreneurial, or if they're even a business owner, but at some point they say, I'm not interested in this anymore. I want to do XYZ over here. Like I want to boat around the world, or I want to take my boat um, down the Mississippi into Key West, or go down to the islands, which is not uncommon because I work with a lot of boaters out of here in Chicago. It's just about your mindset. You need to have a purpose. If someone says, I want to retire and sit on the couch all day, I worry about that because, again, it comes down to your longevity. It comes down to your purpose. Those people, which I really don't work with, because everyone who I'm working with, for the most part, Mike, are very engaged people. But for others, it might be their grandkids. That might be their purpose. That might be their focus. That might be the thing that's going to get them out of bed every day because that's their love. That's their joy. I've had other clients who have retired and started new businesses because it's a passion. It's been a hobby. But they want to run with this and they have the money to do so. And they're willing to take on that risk in that time. Other people just want to travel. Other people want to do XYZ. But my practice is a lot more than just income. I love talking to people about having income that's going to last their lifetime. That's how my brain works. I'm a simplifier by nature. I'm not a multiplier. I like to take a complex situation and make it easy for people. And retirement is hard. It's not easy. There's so much that actually goes into the planning phase that people overlook, don't realize, and that's what I'm here for. But there's so much more than that, because if you can incorporate someone's purpose and you listen to them and they say, I want to start this or I want to do that, you need to incorporate that in their own individual and customized plan. And that's what makes my work, I really don't consider it work, so much fun. It's so much fun.
I like how you spun that around, because I guess you're right. The presumption, if you use the word retire as a four-letter word, the presumption is that you will retire without a purpose, and if you don't have a purpose in life, you will rapidly decline, become miserable, or things along unhealthy, whatever.
Yeah.
One of the things that, and you turned it around to say, well, it's really an opportunity to re-find your purpose or to develop a new one, I suppose, right? Because sometimes, like you said, you're just done with this phase of your life, whatever it is, and you need a new phase.
Correct. Because, I mean, if you spent 30 or 40 years working for a company or a couple companies, you never took that chance to be an entrepreneur. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's okay. That was a choice. It's always a choice. You always have that choice. And if you didn't decide to do that, saving money, putting money away in the traditional formats is what a lot of people do. And that's what we get to work with. And it's actually a big puzzle to put those pieces together, but it's all about reverse engineering and knowing how much money you would like to have every single month call it $5,000 or $10,000 a month to live off of, and then figuring out, is that possible? Can you do that? Can you retire earlier or stop work earlier, or do you need to work longer? And that's what our technology tells them. It just shows them in real time what the plan looks like with what they're currently doing. It's super powerful.
Is that like what I've heard called a Monte Carlo type thing, or is it something different than what your planning tool does?
It's a little bit different, but we can show the Monte Carlo. We can show that, yes.
Okay. Okay. And I guess I sort of intimated this earlier, but what went into your decision to be Bloom Financial as opposed to being, I see some people that have, they're their own company, but they've got a shingle of, whatever, UBS comes to mind, or some others, and they operate independently, I guess, but underneath that, and I don't know if that's, you know better than I do, so there's a difference between the models somehow. I don't know what it is, but you chose to go a direction different than that, and I'm curious about why.
Well, the reason why is because I wanted to be completely independent from a planning perspective, so that when we're working with someone, it's holistic, it's customized, it's created by listening to that person or that couple. So I wanted to make it all about them. And that's what my business is all about. It's all created for my clients. So that was the biggest reason why I hung out my own shingle, per se. And I have to tell you this, Mike, this is not a joke. Even though my last name is Bloom and it has a great connotation, all that stuff, I never made that connection until after I went out and started the company. And someone said to me, "You have a great last name for your company." I go, "What are you talking about?" And then they went into it. I was like, "Oh, I never thought of that." I just wanted to really make it my own. And that's why I, hung the shingle as Bloom Financial, because I was very proud of that. And I'm very, very eager to grow and build a company because I always wanted to do that.
And I'm glad you realized it, or someone told you, because there's
That was so funny.
There's a lot of value there, I think. So you're 35. You're dealing with most of the people. I think you said, from 50 to 70 is where you start engaging with people. And I'm curious. And I know you have a whole process, and finding, re-engaging with their purpose is part of it and stuff. But I'm wondering how you model that to them from your own life. Like, does that question make sense?
So how do I translate the abundance or the mindset into my life and radiate that into them?
Yes.
It's through conversations, actually. It's just through being present and being with our clients. I think it comes down to asking questions as well. I think asking questions is a heck of a lot more effective than making statements, because it's going to engage that other person or that other party or that other couple and get their brains working. And that's a beautiful thing to me, because when I see the motors are cranking in their brain, I know we're making progress. And I believe in making progress. That's so important. And I am fully transparent. I tell people their cost. I tell people what to expect. I tell people how we get paid. So there's no guessing. And it comes down to your communication as well, and just being direct with people as to what to expect, how we work. And I'm very open about my mindset. And, politics comes up all the time in our conversations. And I say, and this is the truth, I'm super in the middle. I'll vote for whomever I think is right for our country at that time. I'm not one party or the other. I'm just very open with my thinking, my thoughts. And I think that's how things should be in this sort of relationship, especially a monetary relationship.
Okay, makes sense. You mentioned that, and I'm just going to go back to strategic coach here because it interests me and it interests you. And you mentioned either when we started or before that you started in the I guess sort of the regular strategic coach program, and then 2 years ago or so you moved up to the 10 times, or they call it 10x now. It used to be called 10 times. I don't know, but
10x.
10x. Okay. So what's been the difference? I guess two questions here, Bill. What has happened to you as a result of being in that program that you don't think would have happened to you if you weren't? And what's the difference going from one level to the next level for you?
Writing a different size check was it was definitely the people in the room. I mean, for instance, some of the people in there, they run $100 million companies. They own $100 million companies. One of the gentlemen in our group opened up a plant in India in 6 months, and he went over there one time. I was like, how did that happen? And they made tens of millions of dollars in a short amount of time from that operation. And that was due to the issues that we were having with China. So he had to retool. And I realized that so much more is possible if you hire well and if you build a team around you. And that's been the biggest game changer, is really hiring well and using the Colby tool. A funny story for you. When my wife and I started dating, after a couple months, I asked her to take the Colby. And she's like, what are you talking about? I was like, oh, please just take this. It'll take you 20 minutes. And after she took that, I had them compare it. And we had a great comparison. Like, I already knew that. She knew that. But I thought, let's check this out. I don't know. I was super curious. And we still joke about that to this day because the Colby works. And I use it on the business side too. And in February, before the pandemic, I had a great hire. And that's, the team has really been engaged through this whole process. But going back to your question, the things that I've learned is just being around the presence of Dan and the people in the room has been instrumentally huge, because my thinking has grown. Because before it was thinking, how do you 10x? How do you 10x your business? How do you grow? And then now he's talking about 100 times. I'm like, huh? I'm sitting there in my first class. I'm like, what? 100 times? I thought this was the 10x. And
right.
Just my mindset immediately changed. And from September of 2019 when I started, I immediately implemented changes. Immediately. I just started making changes, making progress, set different goals, but looked at things differently for my people, meaning my clients. I started thinking differently for them and creating new plans and programs and new strategies and creating new efficiencies and using technology and trying to leverage that to help them. And that's what's led to our company just having fun during these really trying times. Things have been really difficult in the world, but we're trying to have a good time with our clients and make their lives, the best that it possibly can. Not only financially, but having that purpose, mentality. And a lot of the people that I have the pleasure of working with, they're really grateful people anyways. They're happy people in the first place. So I think that's sort of that natural attraction, that law of attraction that I believe in, has been a great tool. So when I left my old firm and started my company, it was part of that law of attraction that led to growth and growing with new clients at that time. So
part of your business one of the components of your business by default, and maybe not yet because you're so young, but over time, is that clients are going to pass away, right? So, which is, I imagine that's difficult or will be difficult, but what it's just part of it's just part of what you do, right? I mean, it's part of life, I suppose, but it's really sort of more up in your wheelhouse just because of what you do. What is it that so when that happens, what do you want to have? What is your goal for the client when that happens, I guess?
Well, oof. I mean, those are some of the toughest times to deal with because there's such an emotional attachment to the way that someone's parents had their money or they taught them to do things one way or another way. And
Right.
they were taught that. I mean, that's where money comes from. We're taught that as children from the people around us. And some of these money habits and thoughts about money and different products are imposed on people, and they don't know all the ins and outs, all the realities, the good, bad, and the difference between them. And I'm going through this right now on two different cases. So it's about taking your time, go slowly, and just really be a resource for whomever has this situation. Because I mean, it's dramatic. It's traumatic. When someone passes away, I saw that in fifth grade. And you just need to go slow and just let people go at their own pace because they're trying to understand what has happened or what needs to happen. And then the tax laws changed this year. So we need to be cognizant of that. So planning has changed. So to really answer your question, Mike, is to take things slowly and try and do what's in their best interest for their families, for themselves, and see how it fits if they're going to be inheriting any monies inside of their own plan. And how do we add those funds to their current plan that we're already working with? So I'm going through it right now. You just need to take your time and just be there for people.
Right. Okay. Well, I appreciate you tackling that one because I know it's not an easy one, but I was thinking to myself, I mean, you have to be prepared for it mentally, right? And of course, you have to have a goal for what happens then as well. So thanks for explaining it. I do appreciate that.
You're welcome.
What are your goals right now? So I know when my goal setting goes, quarter, year, 10 years, 20 years. And some people say, oh, that's a waste of time, because goals, things change so often. You can't be flat, you can't be rigid on goals. And I get that. But I also feel like if I'm not shooting for something that I've written down and committed to, then I'm probably not going to I'll probably accomplish some goals, sure. I mean, that's just everybody does, but I probably won't be intentionally moving towards something I've defined as a place where I want to be. So I'm curious what's going on with you.
Yes. Right now, I just set my biggest quarterly goal that I've ever set for myself, and that's to have $10 million of new assets to manage over the next quarter. I'll be direct with you. I'll be very open. I'm very comfortable with that. And that just means I have the ability to help that many more families with their futures. And that's what it's really about. The money is a byproduct of how you want to live your life. I firmly believe that. And my goals I look at things quarterly right now, but I also have a goal that I want to reach by the end of 2023. So I think we're in charge of our expectations and our timelines. And, Teresa told all of us that in class. I was probably in my second or third year in coach, and she was describing how frustrated she was with one of her deadlines. And one of her friends in coach said to her, "Who created that deadline?" "I did." "Who's in charge of that deadline?" "I am." And she's like, "Oh, okay." I'm being silly. I'll move on, or I'll change that. And you can do that because when you're making progress every day, or when you're doing new capabilities with your team, I need to hire another 2 people right now. That's another goal that I have, is to have 2 more team members who are in their unique abilities, who are really great at what they do, to help add to the dynamics of the business, because our team is phenomenal right now, but we're really at our capacity. So I want to add a couple people, do $10 million of new revenue, or not revenue, new assets to manage and help people with over the next quarter. But once you do that, then you could build from that, because you're creating new processes and new ideas and new ways to really serve people. Because again, it's all about the people. And if you create new ways to do that, it should help your business too.
Well, I don't know. There's so many things about that. So first of all, I love talking with entrepreneurs. So thank you for being on the show. And then it always sort of steps up a little bit for me when I can engage with someone who's either in the program or was like I was, and because it always brings back something that really resonated with me and made a big difference. Like really made a big difference. And the one that, as you were talking there about all through here, I kept thinking to myself, this, my future is my property. And when you started talking about responsibility, and we were talking about goals and all of that, when I heard that for the first time, my future is my property, it's not my mother's, it's not my, he goes on and says his stuff, and I said to myself, holy crap, that's the thing that's missing in my life, is that I'm making it appear as though my future is really not my responsibility. It's a reaction to a whole lot of other people's wants or needs or desires, or what I'm internalizing as my role, right? I come last. And when I heard that, and then I started to think about it, that really just connects to responsibility. So I can either accept what's going to come my way, or I can take responsibility for it. And if I take responsibility for it, I have a lot better chance of making it what I want it to be than if I just let it sort of come my way. And people will say, well, you can't predict the future, and you can't control it, and you can't do all of these things, and that's true. But if I'm accepting responsibility for it, you can be very sure that I'm going to make better choices, and I'll probably become closer to where I want to get than if I'm not.
Right. I mean, you can't control your future, meaning you can't control the things that happen, but the things that you can control are how you react and how you think.
Right.
Your biggest blessing is that we do have that ability to react in a positive or a negative way. And again, it comes down to your choices, comes down to your habits, who you surround yourself with. That has a lot to do with it. We don't realize that, but those negative parts or positive parts have such a big impact on our lives. And that's why I try and focus on those positive parts and keep it that way, and surround yourself with positive people like yourself and Justin. I mean, I talk to Justin weekly about a bunch of random stuff, a bunch of serious stuff. But you want those people in your circles who want the same things, or they want you to do well.
Yeah. And don't think you're crazy for wanting to.
Exactly. Because we're all a little crazy, but in our own great ways.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, Bill, I'm really grateful that you made the time to be on the show today and share your story. It's amazing to me when someone can know, or from the 5th grade, for example, what they want to do, what impact they want to have in the world. I certainly was not like that, and to see you start there and then, well, make it happen. You basically made the future your property, and it's just a phenomenal story, and I do appreciate you sharing it. And if people want to connect with you, I know you're very responsive on LinkedIn. I don't know if that's the best way, what your preference is, but I would very much like people to connect with you.
LinkedIn is a great tool. I never really started using that until I met Justin, to be frank with you.
Oh, okay.
He taught me how to do things. I was always very shy about that, but it's such a fun tool because you get to meet great people. But I am on LinkedIn. It's Bill Bloom and Bloom Financial Company. We're out of Chicago, Illinois. And email is best as well because we're very responsive with that. And my email is bill@bloomfinancial.us. And, we're here to help you retire as you desire.
Love it. Thanks, Bill.
Thank you. It's such an honor. So grateful. Thank you, Mike.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the How'd It Happen podcast, where we believe that success doesn't happen unless you make it happen. You can subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, or wherever you like to listen. And while you're there, please rate it and leave a comment as well. I'd love to hear your thoughts about the show, ideas for future guests, or whatever you'd like to share. And of course, you can always find me at MikeMalatesta.com. See you next time. Thanks again for listening to the How'd It Happen podcast.